I still remember the look on my sister's face when I told her I wanted to start a cookie business. She blinked twice, tilted her head like she was trying to make sense of a bad joke, and then laughed. Not a chuckle, not even a nervous giggle, but a full-blown, can't-catch-her-breath laugh. "Emily," she that's said, still holding back tears of amusement, "you barely passed home ec in high school. What are you gonna do, sell burnt cookies from your apartment kitchen?" That was the first of many laughs. When I told my parents I was serious, really serious, about trying to turn my baking into a small business, my dad didn't even look up from his newspaper. "You need health insurance," he muttered, "and a real job, not this hobby." My mom sighed and stirred her tea slowly, like she'd just heard I was joining a cult. "Emily, you're a single mom. You don't have time to chase dreams. Be practical." They weren't being cruel, at least not on purpose. In their eyes, I was just scared after losing my job, grasping for something to distract me. They wanted me to go back to accounting, or at least get a stable job that didn't involve flour, butter, and the unpredictable hope that strangers would pay for my cookies. But I wasn't looking for comfort. I was looking for meaning. After I got laid off, the silence in my apartment was unbearable. My 3-year-old daughter, Lila, was too young to understand what unemployment meant, but she knew her mommy was home more and sad more. Late at night, after I put her to sleep, I'd bake to calm my nerves. The smell of vanilla and cinnamon gave me something I hadn't felt in weeks: control. At first, it was just for us, then for my neighbors. Then one night, I posted a photo of a batch of snickerdoodles on Instagram. No filter, just cookies on a tray and the caption, "Baked at 2 a.m. because anxiety doesn't sleep." That post got more likes than anything I'd shared in years. And then someone messaged me, "Hey, do you sell these?" My heart skipped. I wanted to say no. I wanted to laugh it off like my sister had. But instead, I wrote back, "Not yet, but I can." That tiny message was the spark, the beginning. Of course, my family didn't see it that way. When I told them I was thinking of selling cookies from home, starting small, maybe through Instagram or a little website, my sister rolled her eyes so hard I thought she'd lose contact with Earth's gravity. She even said it out loud, "You're being delusional." Maybe I was, maybe I am. But something inside me whispered, "Try." So I did. I called it Sweet Grit, because that's what I had. Not capital, not experience, just sugar, sweat, and the kind of stubbornness you grow when everyone tells you you're not enough. I had no fancy kitchen, no team, just a small convection oven and a toddler who sometimes cried while I hand-packed boxes at 1 in the morning. And every time I saw another mocking comment from a friend online or got a, "Well, good luck with that," from a family member, it stung. But it also fueled me. If you've ever had a dream small enough to fit in a mixing bowl but big enough to change your whole world, you'll understand. And if not, well, maybe after hearing what happened next, you just might. Stick with me. The thing no one tells you about starting from scratch isn't the fear, it's the silence. Not the quiet kind that soothes you, but the hollow kind that makes your ears ring. That silence hit me the first week I officially opened Sweet Grit for orders. I had posted flyers in the local library, the coffee shop across the street, even pinned one on the bulletin board at Lila's daycare. I'd posted daily on Instagram and Facebook. I offered free delivery within 5 miles, and I got nothing. No orders, no comments, not even a pity like from my own family. My sister Jenna, the marketing director at some lifestyle company, didn't even share my page. When I asked gently if she could help spread the word, she smiled like I was 5 again, asking if unicorns were real. "I just don't want to confuse my followers, Em," she said. "They expect curated content, not cottage cookies." I swallowed my embarrassment and told her it was fine. But when I got home, I cried in the bathroom with the water running so Lila wouldn't hear me. It wasn't just about the lack of sales. It was the quiet judgment. The way people would say, "Oh, you're still doing the cookie thing?" As if it were a phase, like wearing bangs or going vegan for a week. And then there was the family dinner. My parents had invited us all over for Sunday pot roast. I brought a box of my best-selling lemon shortbread cookies. Not to pitch, just to share. When dessert time came, I placed the box on the counter and quietly said, "I made these, if anyone wants some." My mom gave them a glance. "Oh, that's sweet, honey, but your Aunt Martha brought a pecan pie." No one touched the cookies, not even Lila. She was too busy chasing her cousin in the backyard. I stood in that kitchen for a solid minute, hands awkwardly twisting in front of me, heart pounding. It was like I didn't exist. After dinner, as we were leaving, my dad pulled me aside near the garage. "I know you're trying," he said, not unkindly. "But maybe it's time to think long term. There's a job opening at the bank. Janice says they're looking for clerks." A part of me wanted to scream. Another part? It just felt tired. That night, I sat on the couch scrolling through listings for admin jobs. My bank account was down to $238.64, and my credit card had less room than a motel bathroom. I opened a blank Google Doc, ready to type up a resume, when I heard a small voice behind me. "Mommy?" Lila, half asleep, rubbing her eyes. I turned around. "You okay, baby?" She nodded, then walked up and curled into my lap. "Your cookies smell like Grandma's hugs." I blinked. Hard. She was too young to understand, but those words, they hit deep. That night, I didn't send any job applications. Instead, I stayed up and worked on new packaging, cleaner labels, allergy info, ingredient sourcing. I researched small batch bakeries and watched YouTube tutorials on food photography. If the world wasn't paying attention, I'd find a way to make it impossible for them to look away. 2 days later, I baked a fresh batch of double chocolate espresso cookies and packed them in a brown craft box tied with twine. I left a handwritten note that read, "Made with grit, not just sugar. Emily, Sweet Grit Cookies." I dropped it off at the front desk of the local co-working space downtown. I didn't have an appointment. I didn't know anyone there. I just hoped someone, anyone, would take a bite. That small act felt ridiculous, desperate even. But I did it anyway, because sometimes when no one claps for you, you have to be your own applause. 3 days passed, 3 long days of refreshing my email, checking my DMs, and trying not to think about that box of cookies I left behind at the co-working space. No one contacted me, no one tagged me, no one left a thank you note or even acknowledged the gesture. I started to wonder if they'd just thrown them away. On the 4th day, I had just finished restocking my fridge with sale milk and markdown eggs when my phone buzzed. A message request on Instagram. "Hi there. I found your cookies at the front desk at Hatch House and tried one. Then 5 more. Are you taking orders?" I froze, literally stood in the middle of my kitchen with a carton of eggs in one hand and my mouth wide open. I tapped on the profile. Her name was Rebecca Lynn, and she was, according to her bio, a small business consultant and guest writer for Midwest Maker, a regional magazine for entrepreneurs and creators. My fingers shook as I typed back. "Hi, Rebecca. Yes, I take custom orders. I bake from home. Small batch only. Thank you so much for reaching out." She replied within minutes. "I'm planning a meet and greet for local women founders next month. I'd love for you to do dessert." I reread that sentence 5 times. I had never catered anything before. I'd never even made more than 5 dozen cookies at once. But something inside me whispered, "Say yes." So I did. The event wasn't huge, just 30 women gathered in a loft space with fairy lights and folding chairs. But it felt like the Super Bowl to me. I baked all night the day before. Lemon shortbread, double chocolate espresso, chai spice snickerdoodles. I bought brown craft boxes from the dollar store, cut little circles of parchment, and hand-wrote each label. When I arrived, Rebecca smiled wide. "You're the cookie lady. Everyone's been waiting to try these." I had never heard the words, "everyone's been waiting," in the same sentence as my name. That night, for the first time, I stood behind a table with my cookies laid out like something real. Not just a hobby, not something I did to stay sane, but a brand. And people came. One woman bit into a snickerdoodle and closed her eyes. "Oh my God, this tastes like Christmas at my grandma's." Another asked if I shipped. One more asked if I did custom boxes for corporate gifts. I said yes, to all of it, even if I had no idea how I'd do it yet. Before I left, Rebecca pulled me aside. "You know, I almost didn't try those cookies," she said with a smile. But something about that note, "grit, not just sugar," that line stuck. I nodded, too choked up to speak. That one sentence, the thing I scribbled in 5 seconds, was now the core of everything. That week, I gained 200 new followers. 5 custom orders came in. I was featured in a small blog about makers to watch. But more than the numbers, something shifted in me. I stopped asking for approval from the people who doubted me. Instead, I focused on the people who believed, no matter how few they were. I still didn't have the support of my family. My sister hadn't called. My mom still occasionally sent me job listings. But something about that night changed my posture. I stood a little taller. I wore my apron like armor. One evening, while packing a dozen lemon shortbreads into a box, Lila came up beside me and asked, "Are we famous yet?" I laughed. "Not yet, sweet pea, but we're getting there." She grinned, stuck a star sticker on the box, and whispered, "For good luck." That sticker ended up on every box after that. Momentum. That's what it felt like. For the first time in years, I had something resembling momentum. Orders were trickling in every few days. People were tagging Sweet Grit in photos. A local parenting group even added me to their vendor list for birthdays and baby showers. My cookies were showing up on Pinterest boards and in Instagram stories. It wasn't viral, it wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And it was growing. Then came the message that nearly unraveled it all. It was from a woman named Kelly Stanton, an executive assistant for a marketing firm downtown. They were organizing a corporate holiday luncheon for their clients, about 120 guests, and wanted to know if I could provide dessert. My first instinct was panic. 120 people? That wasn't a small batch. That was a full-on cookie army. But I heard myself typing the words, "Yes, I'd be honored to provide dessert. Let's discuss details." Over the next week, we settled on 3 flavors: white chocolate cranberry, double chocolate chip, and a festive peppermint shortbread. I would bake 360 cookies, package them individually, and deliver them the morning of the event. She offered a deposit. I declined. Why? Because deep down I was desperate to prove I was legit, that I could be trusted, that I didn't need hand-holding. That decision would haunt me. The week leading up to the event was chaos. My oven overheated and shut down mid-bake, forcing me to finish half the batches at my neighbor's house at 10 p.m. I ran out of ribbon. My food processor died. I had to hand-mix dough at 3 a.m. while Lila slept on a folded towel beside the fridge. But I got it done. On the morning of the luncheon, I packed everything into borrowed catering boxes, double-checked the address, and set out with the biggest delivery Sweet Grit had ever made. I arrived 20 minutes early, trembling with exhaustion but glowing with pride, until I walked in and saw a catering truck. A big, shiny corporate catering truck, unloading white-gloved platters of mini tarts, cheesecakes, and cupcakes with edible logos. My heart dropped into my stomach. I found Kelly in the lobby, clipboard in hand, mid-conversation with a florist. "Emily," she said, surprised. "Oh gosh, I meant to call you. We decided to go with a full-service dessert vendor instead. The CEO wanted something more upscale." I blinked. "I baked 360 cookies," I said, voice tight. She frowned. "I thought I mentioned it last week. I didn't confirm the order. There was no contract, right? No deposit, no contract, no legal leg to stand on." I stood there, surrounded by boxes of handmade cookies, ribbon curling at the corners, as corporate staff walked past me with trays of macarons and chocolate towers. No one looked at me, not even Kelly. I drove home in silence. Lila was with a neighbor. My kitchen smelled like sugar and butter, but I felt nothing, just bone-deep fatigue and humiliation. I laid on the couch in my flour-dusted apron and stared at the ceiling, thinking maybe my dad had been right. Maybe I did need to stop this madness and get a job with a 401k and PTO and coworkers who didn't cancel on a whim. I didn't move for hours. That night, I opened the boxes and stared at the perfect rows of cookies. I didn't have the heart to throw them away, so I posted on Instagram. Had a last-minute cancellation, 30 cookie boxes up for grabs, free delivery within 5 miles. Pay what you can. Then I turned off my phone. The next morning, I woke up to 64 messages, people from the neighborhood, people I didn't know, a woman who said her daughter had just been dumped and needed cookies, a man who wanted to gift his wife something handmade, a nurse who worked night shift and hadn't had a holiday treat in years. Every single box was claimed. Some people paid $5, others paid $50. One woman wrote, "You have no idea how much I needed this today." I cried as I delivered each box, because what felt like failure turned out to be the most human moment I'd had in months. I didn't get the corporate contract, but I got something better. Proof. Proof that my cookies weren't just good enough. They were needed. And in that messy, exhausting, soul-crushing day, I realized something else. Maybe I wasn't building a business to impress my family. Maybe I was building a community they couldn't even imagine. Something changed in me after that failed corporate order. It wasn't just the sting of rejection. It was the realization that trying to look legit by their standards wasn't the way to grow. I wasn't a fancy catering company with matching uniforms and gold-plated dessert stands. I was a tired, determined single mom with a secondhand oven, a sharp eye for flavor, and more grit than most people could swallow. So I decided, if I was going to make this work, I needed to stop pretending I could do it all by instinct. I needed help, not from my family who still thought I was wasting my time, but from people who'd walked this road before. I started small. First, I enrolled in a free virtual course for micro-entrepreneurs. It was run by a nonprofit supporting women-owned businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but it taught me the basics. Bookkeeping, digital marketing, even local food laws I hadn't known I was dangerously close to violating. Then I joined a Facebook group called Moms Who Bake and Build. It was full of night owls like me, women baking between bottle feeds and homework help. There were tutorials, late-night venting sessions, and a level of support I'd never known existed. One woman taught me how to batch process dough and freeze it, saving me 6 hours a week. Another shared a Canva template for Instagram stories that made my page look sleek overnight. Most importantly, I learned how to say no. No to unpaid exposure. No to last-minute orders that disrupted my daughter's bedtime. No to pretending this wasn't real. I created an official business email. I updated my logo, still handwritten, but now digital. I paid a local photographer $50 to take professional photos of my cookies in natural light. And I started showing up like someone who believed in her work. That's when things began to shift. One afternoon, I posted a reel of my signature lemon shortbread cookies being stamped with a custom sweet grit seal, a close-up shot followed by a short message, built with 3 a.m. tears and toddler hugs, small batch, big dreams. That reel hit 20,000 views. A woman in Nashville messaged me asking if I could do corporate boxes for her wellness brand. I wasn't licensed to ship across state lines yet, but she saved my name. Suddenly, I was getting 5, 10, sometimes 15 orders a week. But while my confidence in business grew, things at home stayed complicated. One Sunday, during a rare family lunch, my sister Jenna brought up her new condo. "It's in a gated community," she said, swirling her wine. "But don't worry, Em. I'm sure Sweet Grit will be able to cater one of my housewarmings someday." She didn't say it with malice, but the tone was unmistakable, dismissive, indulgent, like I was still playing house with flour and sugar. I smiled politely, then excused myself to check on Lila, who was sitting on the porch coloring. As I sat next to her, I realized something. I wasn't angry. Not really. Because for the first time, their opinion wasn't my compass. They didn't need to see the hours I spent building a brand when Lila was asleep. They didn't have to understand the depth of meaning in every box I hand-packed with care. It wasn't for them anymore. It was for me. And for every exhausted mom who saw my stories and whispered, "If she can do it, maybe I can too." That night, I posted a new mission statement to my website. Sweet Grit exists to remind you that small beginnings don't mean small dreams. We bake with purpose because we know what it's like to be told you can't. And we do it anyway. Orders increased steadily. I started offering seasonal boxes. My holiday survival cookies sold out in 72 hours. I even got invited to speak virtually at a panel for women-owned startups. Me, the girl who used to cry in the pantry while mixing dough. And maybe the biggest win of all? One evening, as I was updating my website, I saw a donation come through. It wasn't for cookies, just a support note. It read, "You made me believe my side hustle matters. Thank you, J. Carter." It was from Jenna. I stared at it for a long time. No apology, no big gesture, just quiet acknowledgement. It didn't erase the years of judgment, but it was enough. Enough to know I was no longer chasing their approval. I had baked something better, self-respect. And I wasn't about to stop now. It started with a reel, just a 28-second video. No trending audio, no filters, no fancy equipment. Just me, messy bun, flour on my cheek, carefully sliding a tray of freshly baked chai spice snickerdoodles out of the oven at 1:42 a.m., while Lila slept curled up on the couch in the background. The caption read, "Midnight batch for tomorrow's teacher appreciation boxes, baked with more love than sleep. Had sweet grit, single mom strong." I wasn't trying to go viral. I was just documenting life, real life, the kind that didn't make it into polished magazines or curated Pinterest boards. I almost didn't post it. I thought the lighting was too dim. My voiceover sounded tired. And who wants to watch a mom bake cookies when there are makeup tutorials and puppy fails everywhere? But I hit post anyway. Then I went to bed. By morning, it had 6,000 views. By lunchtime, it had 40,000. By 3 p.m., I had 187 new followers and 53 DMs, some asking for orders, others simply writing, "I see you. This made me cry. My mom baked like this too. Thank you." I sat in my kitchen, holding my phone, hands trembling. Not from fear, but from the sudden realization that people felt something when they saw me, not just my cookies. Me. That night, a Chicago-based account called Mothers Who Hustle reposted my video to their 1.2 million followers. Their caption read, "This is what resilience looks like. This is what dreaming in real time looks like. Support women like Emily at Sweet Grit Cookies." Within 24 hours, my reel passed 300,000 views, and Sweet Grit exploded. I got 400 new followers that weekend, then 2,000 more, then 10,000. Emails poured in, some from local reporters, others from small businesses wanting collaboration. A nonprofit working with domestic violence survivors reached out to order 200 gift boxes for an empowerment retreat. And in the middle of all that, something unexpected happened. A message from a woman named Kendra Fields, who worked in community outreach for a nonprofit called Small Business Rising America. She wrote, "We came across your video and are deeply moved. We're putting together a short list of small, women-owned businesses to feature in our national campaign next month. Would you be open to being interviewed and potentially highlighted?" I had to read it 3 times to believe it wasn't spam. I responded with shaking fingers. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for considering me." We set up a virtual interview. I didn't try to sound polished or professional. I just told the truth. I told them about baking at midnight because I couldn't afford daycare, about the cookie boxes that were canceled but found their way to people who needed comfort, about the words my daughter said, "Are we famous yet?" and how I didn't want fame. I wanted to matter. The interviewer, a woman named Eliza, smiled at the end and said, "You're exactly what we're looking for." A week later, they officially confirmed. I was chosen as one of 6 women to represent their campaign for Resilient Small Business Month, in partnership with the Federal Community Development Initiative. And yes, the campaign included an event at the White House Visitor Center. Not a press conference, not a private dinner with the president, but still, a reception to honor small businesses run by underrepresented founders, hosted by the Office of Women's Economic Initiatives. I couldn't believe it. They asked each of us to bring something that represented our business. I didn't hesitate. I packed 24 of my signature lemon shortbreads. Lila helped seal each box with a gold sticker. I didn't tell my parents right away. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I wanted this moment to belong to me. When the day came, I stood in a hall lined with portraits of past leaders, holding a tray of cookies made in a kitchen the world once mocked. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't even trying to impress anyone. I was just me, the mom who kept baking after the world laughed, the woman who turned "you'll never make it" into something sweet enough to be remembered. And as one of the White House staffers took a bite and smiled, saying, "These are incredible. You made these yourself? I nodded and quietly answered, yes, in my kitchen. At 2 a.m., I came back home the next day, still wearing the same soft blue blouse I'd worn at the reception. It smelled faintly of lemon zest and nerves. Lila was waiting at the top of the stairs when I walked in. She ran straight into my arms, nearly knocking me over, and squealed, "Did they like the cookies?" I kissed her forehead. "They love them, baby. Every bite." She beamed, like I'd just brought home the moon. We spent that evening curled up on the couch, eating popcorn and watching cartoons. No big announcements, no champagne, just peace. But the world outside wasn't as quiet. My inbox overflowed. Photos from the event were circulating on LinkedIn. One of the organizers had tagged me with a caption that read, "Proof that resilience rises. Meet Emily Carter of Sweet Grit, whose cookies carried stories of motherhood, survival, and sweetness straight to the Capitol." By the next morning, I had a voicemail from a local news station, a podcast request, an email from a university entrepreneurship professor asking if I'd consider speaking to her class. And then, my phone rang again. It was my mom. We hadn't spoken in a few weeks, outside of the occasional dry text. "How's Lila?" Or, "Remember to check the storm warning." I hesitated, but I answered, "Hi, Mom." There was a pause on the line, long enough that I thought the call had dropped. Then she said quietly, "I saw the photos." I waited. "You looked beautiful. And the cookies. They looked real, like something from a magazine." My heart clenched. "They were mine, Mom," I said softly. "I made them, every single one. Single." "I know," she replied. "I didn't understand before. I thought you were running from responsibility, but you were building something. I just didn't see it." Her voice cracked. I didn't cry. Not then. I think some part of me had waited too long for this moment to let it sweep me away. Instead, I said what I needed to say. "I never needed you to understand the cookies. I just needed you to believe I could make something out of nothing." Another pause. "I do now," she whispered. "And I'm proud of you." We hung up not long after. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't movie-worthy. But it felt like a small door opening after years of being nailed shut. Later that week, my sister Jenna tagged me in a post for the first time. It was a photo of one of my holiday cookie boxes sitting on her sleek granite countertop. The caption read, "Proud of my little sister today. You never know how far a midnight batch can go. Hacked Sweet Grit." Thousands of people liked it, but I didn't care about the hearts or comments. I cared that she had posted it. The same woman who once laughed in my face had just publicly said she was proud. That moment didn't erase everything. It didn't undo the eye rolls, the dinner table dismissals, the years of feeling like a screw-up. But it did something better. It told me that my work had spoken for me louder than I ever could. The next Sunday, we had a family lunch. This time, I brought 2 boxes of cookies. My dad opened one and took a bite. No hesitation. He nodded slowly. "These are incredible," he said. "Better than those overpriced cookies your mother buys from that gift catalog." My mom elbowed him gently but smiled. Jenna even asked, jokingly, if I'd cater her condo warming party. I laughed, and for the first time in years, it wasn't the kind of laugh that carried bitterness. It was light, real, shared. After everyone left, I stayed behind to help clean up. My mom brought out a small tin from the cupboard. Inside were faded recipe cards, my grandmother's. She handed them to me. No words needed. That night, back at home, I placed those cards beside my laptop and opened my inbox to a message from the Midwest Artisan Gift Council. They wanted Sweet Grit to be part of their seasonal artisan box, sent to congressional staffers and governors across multiple states. I read the email twice, and then I smiled. Not because I'd made it, but because I finally understood. I wasn't proving anyone wrong anymore. I was just proving myself right. The smell of cinnamon and vanilla still filled my apartment every night, but everything else had changed. I no longer baked with one eye on the baby monitor and the other on the mixing bowl. Lila had started kindergarten now, and while mornings were quieter, the pace of life had only picked up. Sweet Grit was no longer just me. After the White House reception and the artisan box feature, orders poured in faster than I could fulfill them. I hit a wall, not a failure, but of growth, a strange, beautiful wall. One night, after I accidentally burned a batch of chocolate espresso cookies while answering 10 emails at once, I finally said it out loud. I can't do this alone anymore. So I hired help. My first team member was Carmen, a retired pastry chef who'd seen my story on Instagram and messaged me offering 2 good hands and a lot of patience. She came in twice a week at first, then 4 days a week. She worked beside me like we'd been baking together for years. She was the first person to call my cookies artisanal, without a hint of irony. Next came Maya, a college student studying business. She handled order management, social media scheduling, and customer emails. Bless her soul. We operated from a shared commercial kitchen just 10 minutes from my apartment. It wasn't glamorous. Fluorescent lights, industrial mixers, no windows. But it was real. Health inspected, certified, and ready to grow. And I made a decision. I wouldn't just expand the business. I would protect the soul of it. That meant no mass production, no cutting corners for profit, no giving up the handwritten thank you notes inside every box, even when Maya insisted we could save time by printing them. Instead, I trained my team to write those notes in their own handwriting too, because I believed the people buying my cookies weren't just buying a snack. They were buying comfort, a story, a reminder. Our best-selling box was called the Not Giving Up Bundle, 4 flavors named after moments in my life: late night lemon, chai courage, bittersweet bold, hope, and sea salt. We sold out every time we restocked. Customers sent us photos of cookie boxes on hospital trays, teacher desks, dorm room beds. Messages came in from women starting over, mothers healing, daughters who felt seen. And slowly, we stopped being just a cookie brand. We became a movement. I started going live once a week to talk with other mompreneurs, not about money or sales funnels, but about failure, about crying over burnt dough, about pitching products with a baby on your hip and doubt in your chest. The comments section was always full of hearts and me too. Same kitchen, same story. I thought I was the only one. That was when I knew Sweet Grit had become something bigger than cookies. It was a place for women to feel proud of their messy, beautiful journeys. One Friday afternoon, we hosted our first in-person pop-up booth at a local festival. I expected maybe 50 visitors. We got over 400. People drove from 2, 3 towns away. One woman brought her mom, who cried when she saw me. "I watched your first reel," she said, voice trembling. "It was the night after my divorce. You gave me hope." I hugged her without saying a word. Some moments don't need explanations. That evening, I sat on the curb outside the booth, barefoot, exhausted, cookie dough in my hair. Carmen handed me a bottle of water and said, "Do you ever stop to realize what you've built?" I looked around, at the last few customers still lingering, at the team packing up, at the little chalkboard sign that read, "From kitchen tears to community cheers." And I smiled, because she was right. I'd built something, not to prove I was capable, not to get even with the people who laughed, but to remind myself and others that we could start over, at any age, in any kitchen, with nothing but grit and a little sweetness, and that maybe, just maybe, what rises out of failure tastes better than anything you can plan. It came wrapped in flattery. An email from a brand development manager at Golden Maple Ventures, a well-known company that had acquired several artisan food brands across the Midwest. They wanted to schedule a meeting to discuss collaboration opportunities. At first, I thought it was spam, but then I checked the name, the signature, the website. It was real, very real. I remember rereading that email 3 times before whispering to myself, "They noticed." We scheduled a video call. I wore a borrowed blazer and curled my hair for the first time in months. The woman on the other end, Alyssa, was warm, sharp, and charming in that effortless way people in boardrooms seem to perfect. She called Sweet Grit authentic, emotionally resonant, and, her words, perfect for scalable growth with national appeal. I tried to act calm as she spoke. "We love your story, The aesthetic, the grassroots traction. Our proposal is simple: licensing the Sweet Grit brand for national retail. We'll handle production and distribution. You stay the face, the heart, minimal stress, maximum reach. I stared at the bullet points on the screen. National distribution. Packaging in Target stores. Projected first-year revenue in the high six figures. My chest tightened. For a moment, I imagined it. Sweet Grit on glossy shelves across America. Cookies in thousands of homes. My face on a brand card with a polished tagline. No more 2 a.m. bakes. No more scrubbing sheet pans after midnight. But then, something twisted inside me. A quiet, stubborn unease. "What happens to the handwritten notes?" I asked. Alyssa smiled gently. "We can replicate that look. Maybe print a few different messages to rotate. Scalable authenticity, you know?" Scalable authenticity. The phrase hit like cold water. I thanked her for the proposal and told her I'd think about it. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with two voices. One said, "Take it. You've worked hard. You deserve rest, security, success." The other whispered, "You didn't build this to become a face on a box." I remembered the first time I baked at 3 a.m. to clear my mind after getting laid off. The smell of lemon shortbread, the trembling hands writing a thank you note to a stranger who placed a $12 order. I remembered Carmen humming softly as she kneaded dough beside me, Maya taping boxes while telling me about her exams, Lila sticking gold stars on every label. None of that could be licensed. None of it could be scaled. Sweet Grit wasn't just about the cookies. It was about who I became making them. I spent the next morning walking around our little kitchen space, touching the rolling pins, the flour bins, the sticker drawer Lila had organized alphabetically. Then I sat down and emailed Alyssa. I wrote, "I'm honored you see potential in Sweet Grit, but for now, we'll remain handmade, handwritten, and heart-driven. Thank you for believing in us." She responded kindly. She said the offer would stay open, but I knew I wouldn't need it. Later that week, I shared the story with our online community, not the deal specifics, but the decision. The response was overwhelming. "Thank you for choosing heart over hype. Your story is why I support small businesses. This makes every cookie taste even better." And then came an email I didn't expect. From a woman named Denise. She was starting over after leaving a difficult marriage and had been quietly watching Sweet Grit grow from the sidelines. "I've been afraid to begin," she wrote. "But today, reading your decision, it reminded me that small doesn't mean lesser. It means honest. Thank you for choosing honest." I cried, not because of what I'd given up, but because of what I was still holding on to. Sweet Grit wasn't just mine anymore. It belonged to the people who found courage in a cookie, the ones who needed to believe that dreams didn't have to be mass-produced to matter. And if staying small meant staying true, then that was the biggest win I could ask for. Some nights when the bakery is finally quiet and the lights are low, I sit in the corner of the kitchen with a warm cookie and a cup of tea and think about that first message I ever got. "Do you sell these?" 16 letters that opened a door I didn't even know I had the right to knock on. I think about how many times I almost gave up. The corporate luncheon that ghosted me. The first family dinner where no one touched my cookies. The rejections, the silence, the eye rolls. The late nights where I cried into dough because I was sure this dream wasn't built for someone like me. And yet, here I am. Not at the top of the world, but in the center of my own. I'm not baking to prove anything anymore. Not to my sister, not to my parents. Not to anyone who said I was too soft, too late, or too small. I'm baking because it's where I found myself. Because every batch tells the truth I was too scared to say aloud for years. That I am enough. That I can build something meaningful with nothing but willpower, butter, and a belief in better days. Sweet Grit is now a name people recognize. We have customers in 8 states. We ship care boxes to hospitals, send cookies to teachers who feel invisible, deliver to single moms on nights they need a hug in a box. But I don't measure our success in dollars. I measure it in the number of people who write to say, "This made me feel seen. This reminded me I'm not alone. You helped me start again." And now, as I sit here, flour on my shirt, sticky notes all over my laptop, my daughter asleep down the hall, I realize something. The people who mocked me? They weren't the villains in my story. They were just scared in their own ways. Scared to try, scared to fail, scared to believe that ordinary people could do extraordinary things. And maybe their doubt was never really about me. Maybe it was about them. But I'm not angry because their doubt gave me a choice: shrink or shine. I chose to shine, with cookies, with late nights, with trembling hands and stubborn heart. To you watching this, maybe you're where I was, sitting in a kitchen at 2 a.m., feeling like your dream is silly, like no one takes you seriously, like you're too broke, too tired, too late. Let me tell you something I wish someone had told me back then. You are not too late. You are not too small. You are not foolish for trying. You are not invisible. You are building something, brick by brick, cookie by cookie, word by word. And someday, when the noise fades and the world finally sees you, you'll realize it was never about the applause. It was about becoming the kind of person who kept going, even when no one clapped, the kind who turned mockery into meaning, the kind who stood in her own kitchen and whispered, "I'm doing this anyway." And that's how cookies end up in the White House. That's how dreams rise. That's how you become the story someone else needs to hear. So if this story meant something to you, if it stirred something in your chest or brought a tear to your eye, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and tell me your version of sweet grit. Because maybe, just maybe, the next cookie that changes everything might be yours.